Hi and welcome to the Lavender Learning Channel. My name is Jane and I'm an Australian educator. And today I'd like to talk to you about 5 important numeracy skills that your child will need to help them prepare for school. Now, as I said when I prepared my video on 5 important literacy skills for school readiness, there are many skills beyond these 5 which will also be important. And I just picked 5 today that I think are the beginning foundational skills upon which some of those other skills are built. And I think if you can focus on these 5 first and then come back at a future date and have a look for some more content, I'll give you some more ideas so that you can continue to build on these skills once your child has developed them. So the first skill that we have here today to talk about is rote counting. And when I say rote counting, I mean just counting in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And this is an important skill because it's the beginning of that understanding that these numbers come in a sequence, and it's the beginning of learning the vocabulary of numbers. And so when we start rote counting, we often do it as part of a song or as a bit of a game. We might count around when we're playing a game, or we might sing 5 Little Ducks, or the song about catching a fish alive, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, once I caught a fish alive, that sort of thing. And it just begins to give the child that concept that we say these words in the same order all the time. So rote counting is a nice beginning skill for starting to develop that idea that numbers exist and that they have names and that we say them in the same sequence. When we start teaching children numbers, we usually work towards 1 to 10 to start with, and then 1 to 20 in that first year of school, and then 1 to 100 by the end of the second year of school. So if you can be thinking about 1 to 20 when you're working with your child, that will be a really great foundation because they will enter school already being familiar with the things that they're going to be taught. Now, when you start looking at the teen numbers, something to be aware of is that lots of young children don't hear the N on the end of the teen word, and they might accidentally say 30 instead of 13. It's important that we do correct that and get it right at the beginning, because when they do come to learn those higher numbers up to 100, you don't want them confusing 30 with 13 because those two numbers look different and represent different values. So something to be working on right from the beginning is making sure that your child can hear all the sounds in that word and that they're saying it correctly when they count. The second skill here is number recognition. So once a child knows how to count with words, you can introduce the numeral. So these numerals I have on the slideshow, and if you're listening to the podcast version, they're just like magnets on a board. That's a really easy way to start introducing number recognition to your child. Just when you see a number, saying the name that goes with it, and they'll be familiar with the name because you will have been using it in games and songs. Other ways that you can be looking at numbers and recognizing them in your environment would include going for a walk in your neighborhood and looking at the numbers that are on people's mailboxes or houses. Also, perhaps looking at the numbers on birthday cards and candles around the place, phone numbers, all around the world, all around their world, they're going to be seeing numbers. And so we start to unlock that little code for them and let them know that numbers have these words attached that we say when we see them that have their number names. And it's quite exciting, that discovery. Now, if you'd like to work on other activities to help your child develop number recognition, I probably will do a video on this at some point, but just another little easy idea that I have, I'll just grab it here, is that I use these little ball pit balls that you can just buy from a cheap shop in bags of like up to 100. And then I just get a bit of cardboard, a cardboard box, and cut little holes in it that are about the right size for a ball to go in. And then I just put the number. I label each of the holes in the board with a number, and then the child tries matching the right number on the ball with the number in the hole that they're putting it into. So things like that, really easy sorting activities. You might even just write the numbers on little pieces of cardboard and then get some bowls from the kitchen and put a number in front of each one, 1 to 10, and then give your child a pile of cards and get them to start sorting them. Playing card games is the same sort of thing. Snakes and ladders, or games where they start moving through numbers as they're going, is also good. Speaking of snakes and ladders, or something like that, where there's one move, one jump per number, that brings us to our third skill, which is one-to-one correspondence. And what that means is that as we're counting, once a child understands the number names and can say them, that they attribute one name to one object. So I've got a little couple of counters here, and if you're listening to the podcast, you might want to have a look at the YouTube video to see this in action. So I've got one little T-Rex on my hand here, and if I was counting him, I just touch him and say 1. If I had 2 of them, I might tap both of them, 1, 2. So sometimes a child might see a collection and just say, oh, 5, instead of actually taking the time to count each one out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're counting one at a time. And so in my collection, I have 8. And I know I have 8 because 8 was the last number I said when I counted each one out carefully. Children can sometimes learn this skill called sabotizing quite easily and quite early, and that's where you look at a collection and you can say how many are there. So they'll often be able to tell you once they get this concept. They might say that's 1, or that's 2. And when we roll a dice, for example, we get quite familiar with the representation of the dots, and we can easily say, oh, that's 6 on that one. I rolled a 6. So playing board games can help with one-to-one correspondence and that idea of sabotizing as well. But with one-to-one correspondence, we can be practicing that with lots of different things. When we're getting snacks out, we maybe say getting some crackers and putting them in a bowl. You can count them out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for me. Now, that concept of sharing equally, all of those things, I'm saving them for another presentation because they're not foundational skills like this one is. But just recognizing that as I count out 1 cracker, I say that number for each one, and you ended up with 5 because 5 was the last number that I said, and I've got 5 as well. That kind of conversation helps children develop that one-to-one correspondence in their daily life. I saw a really great tip where somebody had written numbers onto a poppet, one of the poppets, fidget toys that children have these days. And then when the child wanted to pop each of the little sections, they had to look at the number and say the number as they were popping it. So that was forcing them to stop and take the time to do each number individually. This is a really important foundational skill for addition and subtraction, because when we come to add and take away from collections at the beginning of school, we might start with a picture of 3 butterflies, and then there's a plus sign, addition sign, and 1 more butterfly. So we want children to be able to count how many they have, 1, 2, 3, and then count how many they have all together when they add the new one on, 1, 2, 3, 4, to get the correct answer 4. If they're just sort of going 1, 2 as they're counting, they might not get that correct answer at the end. And of course, it works the same way with taking away or subtracting. We need to know how many we started with, and then when we take some away from the collection, we can recount to see how many we have left. So one-to-one correspondence, a really important skill, and one you can be developing in many, many ways throughout your everyday life. Speaking of addition and subtraction, the beginning of those kind of concepts comes with understanding the terms more and less. And this is something that you can be talking about in your everyday life when you're looking at collections of things and comparing them. In the picture on the slide, I've put a small collection of dinosaur counters and a larger collection of dinosaur counters. And I might say to a child, which collection has more? And they should be able to just look at that and visually see, in this case, that one has a lot more. If it was pretty close, they may need to count them out to determine which one has more. But at the beginning with your toddler or your preschooler, you could just be doing more or less in everyday moments around your everyday life. Who has more food in their bowl? Who has less? Who has more water in their cup? Who has less? which basket has more washing in it, that kind of thing. And just introducing that terminology of more and less, so that when they get to school, we can be using that understanding as the basis of then understanding how we might add to collections or take away from collections and all of those things. And comparing things, comparing groups of data is also an important mathematical skill in itself. When we start looking at tables and things when the children are a bit older, and we will be saying, for example, on a survey, we might say which object or which item of food is more popular. So understanding that concept of more from those early years is the foundation for so much more learning into the future. And finally, for today's presentation, positional language, which just means talking about things and how they're positioned in relation to other things in a child's space. So we might talk about on, being on or in or under, the 3 examples in that picture there on the slide, but also between, through, over, those kind of things. All of those positional language words are part of understanding directions and location, which is part of mathematical thinking. And having this vocabulary will be really helpful to a child in their general life, but also gives them some very basic understandings to build upon as they head into broader mathematical learning as they get older. Now, how can you be developing these kind of skills? Well, you can be using this terminology in your everyday life. You might say, please put your cup on the table. Can you please put your shoes under the bed? Can you please put the toys in the toy box? Also, you might then create some games. I've put these clues in these places. Go and have a look between this thing and this thing, and you might find a clue there. Go and have a look under this thing. Or you might have an obstacle course that you make for your child to follow some instructions and complete the obstacle course, which includes going over, under, through, between, on, in, those kind of words as well. So there are ways to make that one quite fun, but just be really mindful of using the correct terminology, because that will give your child the understanding of how to use those words, and really praise them when they use the correct terminology as well. And then when they get to school, they'll have that understanding to build upon. A great book for this concept is called Rosie's Walk, and it talks about Rosie the hen who takes a walk all around the farmyard, and there's lots of positional language built into that. Okay. Now, I'd love it if you would like and subscribe, like this video, subscribe to the channel. You'll see that this video is part of a playlist of school readiness videos now. I've completed 4 of them on personal skills for preparation for school, social skills your child will need in preparation for school, literacy skills, and then this one here, numeracy skills. And all together, they form about 1 hour's worth of content. So if you made yourself a cup of coffee and sat down and considered yourself going to a workshop for school readiness, then about an hour of your time, and you'll have some really great ideas and some awareness of things that you can be working on with your child to get them ready for school. And I hope that is really helpful. That has certainly been my goal, to help as many children as possible and to empower as many parents as possible to feel prepared for school starting. Now, if you'd like any other topics to be covered, please feel free to send me an email to jane@lavenderlearning.com.au. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Lavender Learning, so look for me there, and you can contact me through any of those forums as well. And I have the website with the blog where you can have a look at links to videos and also articles that I've written about some of these educational topics, and that's lavenderlearning.com.au. Thanks so much for your time today. I look forward to helping you more in the future.